Hello African pilot viewers, we are here at the South African Civil Aviation Authority's National Aviation Conference. Aaron, you were just on stage, you had some wonderful things to say. But let's start with why you're here.
So I'm here to represent the airlines' interests. Philippa, you know, our airlines have got quite a lot of concerns right now. And I think there are three main areas where they are concerned. They are concerned about the geopolitics, the overall impact of the geopolitics, the security of supply of fuel, the cost of the supply, and the implementation of digitalization, modernization of policy and regulation.
But I think right now it's about survival, is it not?
It is about survival, yes, you're right. It is about survival and also the growth of the industry. Because what has happened is in the past 2 years, we've seen phenomenal growth.
Yes.
But suddenly it's being curtailed because of things that are beyond our control.
Yeah.
But the silent killer, Philippa, is there's also an issue around the regulation, the policy, the administration is so fragmented that it's actually holding us back, and people don't realize that. That's why we're here.
One of the things that you said on stage, which I thought was quite interesting, was just that 2% from aviation in terms of impact, carbon emissions. Why are we being held to such a high account if it's only 2%? And that's globally, never mind Africa, we're not that busy. We want to be, but we're not.
The context is because only such a small population of the 8 billion people on the planet actually access travel by air. It has always been seen as an elitist environment. And because of that elitism tag, we are seen as the bad guys because when you have got money, you can afford to pollute. But it's only when we actually do the number crunching, then you realize as global aviation, our emissions are only 2%. Maritime actually contributes more than we do. But we're not going to name them. We're going to say, let's talk about ourselves. Yeah. The 2% is actually aggregated to a lot of other areas. But as far as commercial aviation, we accept 2%. That's what we're dealing with.
So I read this morning that Egypt is going to be putting in a sustainable aviation plant, which I think is quite exciting and good for the region. Where else can we put that value stream into the SADC region?
So maybe before I answer that question, let's talk more about the production of SAF itself.
Yes.
So SAF is produced by virtue of maybe substituting traditional fossil, carbon fossil, and taking something else to still produce fuel. Mm-hmm. Okay? Yes. And why is it called sustainable aviation fuel? Is because it doesn't mean that it doesn't have carbon emissions. It does, but it just has lesser carbon emissions. So as an industry, we said, okay, let's imagine that there's a fuel that is going to produce less carbon emissions. But before that, we have what we call low carbon aviation fuel. Yes. So let's look at even additives that come from ethanol. You can actually use ethanol in smaller quantities and you produce less, not necessarily as less as the SAF that has been seen as the panacea, right? So we are saying it's a good idea, it's a very good innovation, but there are also technologies that need to be upgraded for us to get to 100% utilization of SAF. So Egypt has done a good job. They're going to produce SAF. Our challenge is at what cost?
Yeah. Okay.
Not only in terms of the availability or the procurement of that SAF, but what else are they foregoing for them to produce SAF? Because the feedstock has to come from somewhere. Feedstock could be used in cooking oil. It could be waste that you normally put on dump sites and all kinds of things. But they need to be able to have sustainable supply of that feedstock for them to be able to produce this SAF at a certain level.
Do you think there's an agricultural link here, being able to grow feedstock, supplementing without, foregoing food security, obviously, but I mean...
So that was our biggest worry as Africa. Our biggest worry was we're going to see an immediate diversion from agricultural production to feedstock because obviously there's more profit from feedstock. And fortunately, AFCAC and African Union actually said no. We are going to make sure that we police the process. And if you're going to produce SAF, you actually give a guarantee that you're not going to take away from agricultural land. you're going to start thinking of other innovative and creative ways of agricultural waste or even some industrial waste, and use that first. If you then get to the stage where you produce your own, then you can start producing things like, I think, tobacco waste or whatever it is that they're going to do. That is the approach. Now, with Egypt, I'm not sure. The little that I've heard or read is that they have a mix. Yes. They have a mix of feedstock as well as synthetics. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But then also, you've got your engine OEMs who are making like far more efficient engines compared to like 20, 30 years ago. So that surely should also contribute to that sustainability without having to go crazy on the SAF side.
I like the word you use, crazy, because I think everybody seems to focus only on SAF as if that is the be-all and end-all. No, the engine manufacturers have done a great job of actually analyzing the propulsion systems and saying, if we just adjust a little bit of what we currently have, how much emissions can we reduce? And they've done a good job. We are under I think the guidance of the manufacturers that probably in another 10, 15 years, we will probably have an 80% carbon reduction from the current propulsion. They're tweaking here and tweaking there, using different components and so forth.
So that takes us to 1%?
It will take us to about, I think, 15% in 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah? But coupled with that are the airframe manufacturers. With the composite material that they're using, the aircraft are going to be lighter, they're going to fly higher, and so forth. So combine that engine efficiency with the composite manufacturing of the airframes, I think we're going to get to about 85, 90%.
Sure.
So I think that is, for me, a significant development, which is where we should focus. But however, where we should start is right now on the ground. So the pushback equipment has to be replaced with electronic equipment. And it's there, it's been tested out. Earlier, my colleague spoke about the SIDS, Standard Instrument Departure Systems, instrument flight procedures. All these things can be automated, they can be digitalized, and then when you put in things like free routing areas, you actually see that without even having to go into full-scale SAF production, you actually reduce carbon emissions just by improving the facilities and processes that we have right now.
How are our airlines dealing with now, and what is industry doing now, and what support is there now to ensure that we have the fuel to fly?
So that's where, when I was talking earlier on, I said security of supply is important. Our airlines produce their schedules a year in advance. And of course, they take into consideration the seasonality. They have to make sure that according to the seasonality, they order fuel in advance. They have enough aircraft to be able to have the schedule integrity. And they want to make sure that they at least maintain that schedule integrity. In the unlikely event that this conflict continues for a longer time, they are now having to readjust. Two things that they are doing. Instead of completely cancelling, they are combining flights.
Okay.
Just to make sure that at least
the flight is full, if nothing else.
That's right.
Yeah.
The second one is, last case scenario is to reroute. Okay. Still operate, but go maybe combine two destinations on one flight. The ultimate, and this is what we actually are dreading to happen, is to cancel flights and completely stop operations.
Because if we look at it from this perspective, we've dragged ourselves out of COVID recovery. We started seeing real gains, both in cargo and passenger, and it's not our war, yet the whole world is impacted by it and by the supply of it. Obviously, the biggest lesson is that security of supply. How do we secure that future going forward?
For me, I have a sense of relief from what I've seen happening already. There has been a very immediate reaction by our leaders to look back onto the continent. Like I said earlier on, there's 11 oil-producing countries on the continent. Why don't we go to them and say, what do you need for us to assist you to maybe have a semblance of a refinery? Yeah. There is a refinery in Nigeria which is actually not operating 100%, the Dangote refinery. What do we need to do to make sure that they are at least given comfort that whatever they produce is going to be secured on the continent? Right now, this week, Ethiopian Airlines has announced that they've got a relationship now. They've established a contract, an agreement with Dangote, that they are going to uplift quite a lot of their fuel out of there. That's what we need to happen, and we're already beginning to see that happening. Angola, which is just a stone's throw away from us, are beginning to also channel some of their output to South Africa. Although it takes a little bit longer because it is coming by ship, it is being tankered in. But those are the kind of things that we're beginning to see.
And because they're on the same continent, and we're now like doing these arrangements, should we not get it at a better price?
That's why the African Continental Free Trade Agreement says remove the barriers, and these barriers are non-political barriers, non-trade barriers, and we should be able to get it at a lower price. I think we'll get there sooner than we would have gotten if we didn't get into this situation.
Other than that, what news do you have from your association? Latest news, what have you been up to?
The latest news is that you are going to be invited to our AGA. It's going to be exciting.
Yes.
7 to 11 October.
Yes.
We're going to be in Mauritius. And we have even gone a notch higher.
Yes.
Not only are we going to have the AGA, we're going to have some sessions with our airlines, with our manufacturers, and our stakeholders, where we're going to be talking about solutions. So we're already canvassing for the solutions that we need to actually highlight and make sure that they become our go-to plan for the rest of the 2-3 years that are coming through. It's already on the website, as well as the other interventions with AFCAC. Mm-hmm. We have some interventions with AFCAC where we're talking about don't belabor the fact about SAF. Yes. What solutions are there? So we have got things like AfriSAF that is coming on board. Mm-hmm. We're also doing training for our airlines. The most exciting news is that we have airlines that have signed up for what we call Carbon Connect with IATA.
Okay.
Carbon Connect is a very simple, free facility for our airlines to record and report their emissions. So we are the first association on the continent to actually go to that extent of signing an MOU with IATA and having our members sign up for Carbon Connect.